Hello and welcome to the Trump Tyranny Tracker. It is September 23rd. It's Tuesday as we look at what the Trump regime is doing to our democracy at a fast and furious pace. We were just talking about Zelensky's press conference with Trump a few minutes ago at the United Nations. He seemed, I would say, quite positive towards Zelensky in many ways. Brought the children up again and also spoke about the what he said was quite good advances by the Ukrainian army against the Russians. So it was surprisingly, supportive, which is always interesting, isn't it?
He must have gotten all his venom out during that hour and a half of ramblings.
It could be. It could be the earlier
He had
thing
nothing
was
left to say.
the
Again, his words mean nothing. It's actions, and when we actually see any kind of actions, which we have yet to see from the United States, except anything that benefits Russia, then I'll have something to say. But right now, his off the cuff comments here today. He likes Zelensky. Tomorrow he hates Ukrainians, and it's their fault. And
until there's action, there's nothing
I
there.
listened. I turned on his speech. I got through probably 4 minutes, and then I was like, what the fuck? How could half of this country have elected this person? I mean, this is the biggest humiliation to America just for him to be standing there. I could imagine, like every delegation from around the world is sitting there with translators, in their ears, getting his campaign speech, whatever the heck that was.
It was a racist diatribe. It seemed to me it was going on about immigrants and how all these countries are, going to fall apart because of their immigration policies. Then he went on about the climate change thing. Like it's just very weird, disturbing president.
It's one thing when it's within the family and we have to deal with it, but then when you see it being pushed out across literally every country. The only thing I did here that I agreed with him is that the UN is useless. That every and any day I will say the same thing because they've absolutely done nothing over the decade to help Ukraine. They've done nothing for nothing, literally.
Trump was asked at his press conference with Zelensky about what happened in Copenhagen earlier on, which is the sighting of those drones. We'll get into that in a second. And he said that NATO countries should shoot down any Russian aircraft if they enter their airspace. And this relates to a story that came out of Copenhagen, where Copenhagen Airport shut down Monday night after police reported 2 to 3 large drones flying nearby, forcing a halt to all takeoffs and landings. At least 20 flights were cancelled or delayed, with others diverted to smaller Danish airports and Sweden. This is the third now drone incident involving different countries that in NATO. More. It's quite, we had Estonia, we had Poland. Now it looks like it could be Denmark. This is quite a disturbing development for that country. Tell us what you know about it.
So can I just lay the background on this? Yeah. You had the war criminal come to Alaska with the red carpet rolled out. Since then, I mean, Russia has escalated to the point that they're beyond emboldened and they're not even bothering hiding this. Immediately after that summit, they hit Western factory U.S. factory in Western Ukraine. Right after that, they hit the British and EU consuls in Western Ukraine. Then, as I kept saying, I would argue they tried to assassinate EU Commissioner von der Leyen when they targeted her plane with the GPS jamming. Then you had 19 drones that came into Poland that Russia sent via Belarus, and you had a few, not all 19 came through Belarus. And how did Belarus get rewarded? Trump removed sanctions off of their Belavia Airlines, which means that now Russia can get U.S. parts for their airplanes, which Russia's desperately struggling. I mean, this is the one thing with sanctions evasions they have not managed to get their hands on is parts for airplanes. And he sent U.S. military people to Belarus to participate in looking at Russia's
observing the war games,
observing the war games. Then you had, after this, 3 fighter jets, and this is what, a matter of 3 weeks? You had 3 fighter jets enter Estonian space, 12 minutes. This isn't just by accident they flew through. 12 minutes they were in their airspace. Then you had a Russian surveillance plane hovering over the Baltics the other day that Germany discussed how the conference about. Then you get to this incident. It was not just Copenhagen. It was Copenhagen, Oslo, and Stockholm. All 3 yesterday, hours apart from each other. The airports and sensitive locations were on high alert because of drones in the area. So this is where we are in 3 weeks since, or 3.5 weeks since this summit, where Russia feels emboldened, and now they are doing everything to try to start a war with NATO.
They certainly seem to be. I mean, that seems to be the underlying intention here, is to test how NATO responds to each of these incursions into their different airspace. But in this case, they disrupted traffic from an airport. I mean, this is it's becoming quite active disruptions. It's not just testing whether these drones get taken down. Disrupting the airport's a big deal for these countries.
And yesterday we're hearing about this, but just since November 2023, Russia has been using Kaliningrad territory inside of Russia off of Finland, across the border, to carry out these GPS jammings. I'm not sure the last count, but it's well over tens of thousands of incidents where you had, European airplanes disrupted and they had to change course or use paper maps to land. I mean, for 2 years, I've been screaming that we are literally, by a miracle, we have not had an international incident of Russia again taking down a civilian airplane. And here they call further this by attacking von der Leyen's plane. So, I mean, Russia has been, very reckless, very aggressive. The fact that, we haven't had any kind of accident is a miracle. But now, the past 3.5 weeks, they have really shifted their operations full blown to Europe. And now you're going to see, them doing everything to try to expand their war.
It seems, if Trump holds to this, of course, he could change his mind. He just found out, he said, about the Copenhagen incident and all these other incidents. But he said that NATO should take collective action. And he also said that they should shoot down Russian military aircraft that enter their airspace. I don't know if this qualifies as military aircraft. It sounds to me like it would. But, if he's taking that kind of hard line position, that's a very good thing. He obviously is going to be supportive of NATO, but who knows? Because he obviously has not been briefed entirely on what happened, and he hasn't had a chat yet with Vladimir Putin, probably.
When it comes to Europe and their security, the United States, I keep saying this, at best, the United States right now under Trump is neutral. At worst, they might become an enemy where European troops are going to have to fight U.S. troops. If U.S. tries to move into Greenland or Canada or any other, NATO territory. So Europe really needs to do this decisively amongst themselves. And frankly, yes, they need to shoot down these jets. I've been saying this. Poland, finally gave the threat that they will shoot down the jets, but I cannot tell you how heartbreaking and infuriating it's been over the past few years where you have Russian missiles and drones entering Poland on their way to Ukraine. Poland scrambles fighter jets, and what happened now with Poland is intentional towards Poland, but a few times it's happened where they transit Polish airspace. Poland, lifts fighter jets, sees that this is no threat to Poland, and allows these missiles to continue. And then not even 20, 30 minutes later, I get reports of another apartment building bombed, people being buried under the rubble. I mean, so technically they should have been shooting this down because let me tell you, I've seen comparisons with Turkey. Russia attempted this shit with Turkey, and I believe it was 15. Turkey didn't even hesitate. They shot down the plane. End of story. Russia never even made a peep about it. I remember looking, monitoring their chatter and their news and public statements and laughed. And I'm like, look at this. They're not even going to say nothing about Turkey. They didn't even make a big international, incident thing like on the global stage. Domestically, it was kind of buried. Like this plane just fell and that's it. And like nothing to see. Let's move on. And that's it. So this is how you deal with Russia.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that really is a heartbreaking thing when you talk about how much of those missiles went through Polish airspace and then hit Ukrainian buildings, causing those civilian casualties, and repeatedly over many years. Zelensky, by the way, has called this an obvious expansion of the war by Russia. So, and that he did with Trump there today. So we'll keep watching that story and keep you updated.
For everyone who said, why is Ukraine important? This happened with Poland. Who do you think is the first country who offered to assist Polish military with, dealing with these drones? Ukraine. Immediately, they reached out and said, we will help. Right now, Ukraine is the leading capital, making these drones. We are outbeating United States, their capabilities. And, for everyone who carries on, who cares what happens with Ukraine and what do they have to offer? Well, guess what? Europe doesn't know how to fight in a war. Ukraine does. And not only just a war, but different scenarios from guerrilla warfare, from, being on the front lines, from drone warfare, from ballistic missiles, from every aspect you could think of. So, I mean, here it was just a good example. Like, it wasn't even like 5 hours later that I saw Polish news report that Ukraine had reached out and that they're sending advisors and, they're going to help give training on how to combat these drones.
Yeah, those drones and the drone industry in Ukraine are very, very important. And as you point out, world leading. And they're being exported now to Canada and to other countries that need drone technology, in cases, an incursion against them by Russia or the United States. So our second story,
has scored the jets from popular. Exactly. I'm sorry, I'm so
no, go, keep going.
If I was the head of NATO, I would freaking take every bomber and fighter jet from Europe, send it to Moscow, dump 10 million pamphlets to the Russian citizens and say, if you don't take care of your government, this is what your cities are going to look like. Because this is how you deal with Russia. I know Russia very well. And, you can't tiptoe around. Once you push back, they crawl back in their thing and then see which other way they can.
If the reverse was happening and NATO aircraft or NATO drones were in Russian airspace, they wouldn't hesitate to knock those down. They would go right for it, and we should be acting in the same way. Now to our second story. Lindsay Halligan, Trump's former personal attorney with zero prosecutorial experience, has been sworn in as the interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia after Trump forced out her predecessor for refusing to indict James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. I don't know what you say about this story. It's just so blatantly obvious, and just some people have called it the end of democracy. There was a article in the New Republic. The headline read that this democracy in America is over.
Well, I mean, right now we definitely are dealing with an authoritarian regime. Long term, do I believe it's over? I don't think so. It will be over when media can't write about what is happening, when the courts don't stop what is happening. I mean, even if they manage to get prosecutions, across the line with the grand jury, you still have a court of, peers and a judge who has to decide whether this case should even be brought in. So for now, we still have mechanisms that we need to really rally around and make sure are protected, like at least the courts that are for now holding somewhat not the Supreme Court, but at least the regular courts. But this is expected. He's purging the whole regime. I said it a million times. This is exactly what happened in Russia. Putin walked in, wiped out all the agencies, put in his thugs to handle the agencies, and now it's unspoken. Unlike here, where Trump, in a DM or whatever that was supposed to be, I still am so confused. What
Apparently, an
president
email is
DM?
what he was trying to send. So who
Yeah,
knows?
I mean, what president DMs their attorney general a text message? I mean, the whole thing is bizarre.
Yeah,
But
he's very bizarre.
unlike here, where Trump, comes out every day and says, "I think this one should be arrested, that one needs to be arrested, take care of this." In Russia, Putin installed his loyalist into every agency. It's an unspoken word. You don't even have to have discussions. All it has to be one name given, and then they know what to do with the rest. I worry we're going to get here with this. And that's it. The one thing I did take from the story, because I document this shit like literally every other day, something like this is happening, is that Comey's 2020 a statute of limitations from his testimony is expiring. So if they're going to move, they have to move literally within the next, I think, few weeks.
Are they alleging that he perjured himself during that?
I don't know.
Is that what they who knows? Who knows? But that could be what they're trying to allege.
The story mentioned it. Again, we don't know what's going through. I mean, you see, they're trying to cook different things, whether with Lisa Cook, it's a fraudulent mortgage applications. Meanwhile, Reuters reviewed the applications and saw that she did check off and list the second residence at the vacation home. But they're trying everything. I mean, this is like the most lawless regime, but not only are they lawless, thank God they're incompetent. So who knows where it's going to come? You see case after case being thrown out just because of how it was put together, so sloppy. So, I mean, this is the one thing where we should be thankful that we can even discuss this and that the courts are still, at least the lower courts are functioning.
It's hard to imagine a grand jury indicting any of these prosecutions because they're so hard to prove. There's nothing there. So we'll see what happens.
But also, people need to keep in mind it's also not about having a successful prosecution. It's about the propaganda theater surrounding it.
Right.
So, for instance, if a Comey gets picked up and has to come in and give a mugshot, even if the case gets thrown out, the impressions that will remain are his mugshot and, the fact that he was accused of this and that. Plus, it's costly, and plus it shuts everyone else up because a lot of people, in the federal government are going to say, we don't want to really deal with this, put our family into danger, and we don't financially have the money to, protect ourselves against these frivolous lawsuits. This is a Russian tactic. I mean, this is what Russia does to silence journalists around the globe. If you look at London, I mean, they're constantly were suing one media publication and journalist, to shut them down, knowing that the cases will get thrown out, but it just puts a chill for people to shut up.
Staying with the courts, at least the Supreme Court has cleared the way for Trump to remove Rebecca Slaughter, the last Democrat on the Federal Trade Commission, overturning a lower court that had reinstated her. More concerning, the justices agreed to hear arguments on overturning a 90-year precedent that protects the independence of agencies like the FTC. And that last part is very concerning, that they're considering really challenging how these commissions act and how independent they are.
Yeah, and you see Trump, from day one going after all these independent watchdogs, purging all of them. And now you have a Supreme Court, which really, I don't know, it's frankly very disturbing. And I don't even foresee how we can correct this in the next several generations, even if we ever get this country back or Democrats, because to expand the Supreme Court, I mean, you can't just, vote on it in Congress. You need like majority, 2/3 vote. So anyway, but this Supreme Court is basically a rubber stamp for the most ludicrous things. I mean, and this is not even going through regular mechanisms. Now, all of these, approvals that are for now. Every headline, they allowed him to fire her for now, or they allowed him to, disappear immigrants, based on the color of their skin for now. Like all these headlines, this is all going through shadow dockets. This is not
Interesting.
even actual real cases being presented before the Supreme Court. That's why you keep saying for now. And they're basically rubber stamping him every step of the way and, letting him expand his powers.
But if they're going to hear this argument around the precedent that protects the independence of agencies, that sounds like it's a real case that'll go before SCOTUS. Okay.
So for now, they allowed him to fire her.
Until they've reviewed
then
that,
eventually we'll get to, they are hoping by the end of the year to see whether, this is something constitutional or not. But I mean, that Supreme Court is lost.
Yeah, it's lost its way. Trump has also signed an executive order designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, even though the U.S. law has no mechanism for labeling domestic groups this way at all. Legal experts note this targets an ideology rather than an actual organization and creates a pretext for a broad crackdown on any political opposition, which we, of course, have been speaking about for months and you've been highlighting.
Yeah, this is again taking the path in Russia where Putin, started eliminating opposition by labeling them either foreign agents, which in 2019 he really escalated and they created a foreign agents law. But this is, a way to get rid of opposition. And, it's not about Antifa. First of all, I don't even know what this Antifa is. I keep hearing about it. And all these accusations of Antifa, there's no, it's like there's no registered organization, because in the same breath that Trump talks about Antifa, he talks about George Soros and the Ford Foundation, which I didn't realize
Well, they're going to try to connect all these to Antifa, right? That's what they're going to try and do, because Antifa doesn't exist. There's no headquarters. There's no leader. You can't really join it. If you look it up to join Antifa, I don't think you can join it. I don't think anyone in our audience can even point to an Antifa member that they know. It's an ideology, and that means that anyone can be.
I think we all are. Who is not anti-fascist? I mean, if you're talking about an ideology, then every single person who is against fascism then is Antifa, and does that make all of us now domestic terrorists?
It could be that's what they're leaning towards. Is they're getting very sensitive around them being called fascist by anybody. I noticed a couple of them, Trump and Johnson, the other day, were talking about how you can't label this government fascist. That is not a law, obviously, but if that's how they're going to start thinking, then maybe Antifa becomes everybody who calls them fascist. I don't know.
And you know what? In Twitter, when I'm in my trolling mood, which happens often, I have to every single statement said, funny you overlook Vance, the vice president, because he's the first one who brought up that Trump is America's Hitler. So, if you if you want to go after, maybe he's Antifa. I don't know.
Maybe we'll make him the leader of Antifa. That way they can label him a terrorist. Finally, the Trump administration has sanctioned Viviane Moraes, the wife of Brazilian Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes, accusing her of supporting censorship and politicized prosecutions related to Jair Bolsonaro's coup attempt and conviction. The State Department also revoked visas for several Brazilian judicial officials. This is unbelievable.
So here you have Bolsonaro, an insurrectionist like his buddy Trump, who failed like his buddy Trump. He actually upped Trump on one because he actually had an assassination plan.
He was really doing a coup, as far as we could tell.
With the current president Lula. And so here you have this, although Trump arguably did try to have his vice president, I guess, assassinated. He didn't, have an operation around it, but he did, encourage it, and his supporters were creative enough to bring a noose and, understand the directions that they need to eliminate Pence. But here you have, Brazil, who actually is acting like a democracy, and they actually did hold the former president accountable, which frankly, American failed to do. And for America's criticisms of other countries, you have, other countries who actually do prosecute their leaders and don't make a big deal of it. I mean, it's not like a spectacle like here. I remember when Trump was first indicted, the media was just running wild, like, oh my God, how could this happen? Wow. And I'm like, what do you mean? It happened in France, it happened everywhere.
Yeah,
You
it's
commit a
normal,
crime.
actually.
It is. You commit a crime, you get prosecuted, and that's it if there's evidence. And so here I'm actually jealous of Brazil. That they did prosecute this and that they did find Bolsonaro guilty and that they did go through. What is extremely disturbing in this case is, again, this is Trump's friend, and that Trump used our tax-funded agencies. We're paying for this shit. I mean, I need to start a campaign for every egregious act America does and say we are all paying for this. He used our agencies to threaten Brazil with tariffs. So we had the Treasury Department involved in threatening to put, I think they did put or 50% tariffs, or maybe they
They did,
threatened to
yeah.
put.
And they did.
Um,
So coffee's
they
gone
did.
up.
Yeah, I just his ramblings and how it computes to actual policy being written. It's hard to catch up. But they, put tariffs. So you had the Treasury involved. You had the State Department immediately involved, revoking, visas. And issuing bans from anyone involved in this case. And now you have this, sanctions and everything else that they're threatening. And
Against justices, though, and the justices' wives. I mean, it's so personal and not the way things are done in the world. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
for once, I can say this does not happen in Russia because this
Well,
is
it happens in
something that even
America.
the Kremlin is, studying closely. Like, oh, what a good idea! We need to add this to our tactics because, I mean, not that anyone travels to that shithole, but, um, you know, it's still it's problematic, and again, I hate the fact that we are paying for this with our agencies, who are funded by us, being weaponized to go after justices,
Mhm.
or the International Criminal Court for issuing arrest warrants for Putin, and Netanyahu. So the whole thing is just it's disturbing that the
It really
leaders of
is.
our
I mean, because
government.
Brazil is a functioning democracy, whether you like it or not, and these justices are doing their job and fulfilling their job is part of that democracy. And for America, the bastion of democracy, to be targeting them for doing their job is quite unbelievable. There's also
And
so good.
just to cut in, I mean, and even if they weren't a functioning democracy, it's not our business.
Yeah.
The United States under Trump is becoming like Russia. Russia justified a full-scale invasion into Ukraine because they're, alleged neo-Nazis. Even if the Ukrainians wanted to be neo-Nazis, what business is it of Russia? Like, like these tactics are mimicking how Russia behaves, that they think that they should dictate how Estonia should carry about their business, or, Ukraine or Moldova or any other country. And then now we're doing the same thing. I mean, so even if Brazil wasn't a functioning democracy, what is it our business to go and slap sanctions or visa bans or threats or tariff, them for handling their own internal domestic affairs?
It's just hard to fathom how America has declined in 9 months, how we've gone from being, a vital democracy into this, authoritarian
Banana
cesspit,
Republic.
really, is what it is. That is the Trump Tyranny Tracker for today. We'll be back tomorrow for another edition. Anything you want to promote, Olga, on the way out?
For anyone who doesn't know about the Active Measures series, this week we're doing relitigating the 2016 election because
It's my
Trump is
favorite
threatening
topic.
to prosecute people who actually handled the 2016 election. So this week we covered WikiLeaks as a cutout for Russian military intelligence to disseminate the hacked emails and just the tactics surrounding that and how close Assange was way before, Trump stepped down the escalator or even had ambitions, at least in the 2010s, to run how the WikiLeaks and the Russian relations relationship started, how close it was, even to the point that, Russia had an exfiltration plan, and they wanted to pull him out of the embassy. How Manafort, conveniently, as Trump's campaign manager, went allegedly to visit Assange, right, in the spring as he came on to the campaign.
I remember that, yeah.
This is today's, we basically spent the first 9 chapters showing how Russia laid the groundwork. And then now going forward, we're going to move now into the actual operations that happened for the 2016 election.
It's fascinating stuff that you and Julie Roginski are doing as part of the Unmasking Russia series on the 2016 elections. At narrative.org, there is something special we're doing tomorrow night. William K. Black, who was the prosecutor involved in regulating and prosecuting a lot of the people involved in the SNL crisis, if you remember that far back. I certainly do. He put 1,000 bank executives behind bars in a strange thing that doesn't seem to happen anymore. Certainly in 2008, no one went to jail. But when he was around, lots of people went to jail. So we're going to look at the greatest heist from a big picture perspective. We're going to look back at what instigated the 1987 SNL crisis, looking as well at Black Monday, and then see how it proceeded, how it connects to all the way up to now and then into the 2008 financial crisis as well, because they're so interlinked. And it all connects to Trump and Epstein and a whole bunch of other characters that surrounded them, because that's just the way the world seems to work these days. So that's tomorrow night at 8 p.m. for paid subscribers on Narativ. And that is the show today. I'll be back in 28 minutes with Dean Blundell for the 5 Stack. And I shall see you tomorrow, Olga. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Bye.
Bye, everybody.